Okay, so this is going to be a version of the test 4.5. We're going to use this as a review. Just be mindful that when you take your test, the order will be different. So your number one will not necessarily match my number one, and so on. So for our first problem, we're going to use the remainder theorem to find the remainder when f of x is divided by x plus 3. Okay, so there's one of two things you can do. One, you take your divisor, which is the x plus 3. It's kind of like your linear factor. You set it equal to 0, and then you find out what x is. So you would subtract 3, and we would get x equals negative 3. So one thing you can do is plug in negative 3. So you can do f of negative 3. And then whatever you get, that would be your remainder. That would be your answer. The way that I like to do this is with synthetic division. So I'm looking at our problem f of x. And we have 4x to the 6th plus 110x to the 3rd, and then plus 54. Okay, so with synthetic division, notice we're missing some terms. We have the x to the 6th, we're missing x to the 5th, x to the 4th, so I need two zeros as placeholders. Then we have x to the 3rd, but we're missing x to the 2nd and x to the 1st, and then we have our constant. So I'm going to need several zeros as placeholders. So with synthetic division, negative 3 is going to be my little box number. And then when I begin listing my coefficients, I will list a 4 for the 6th power, a 0 for the 5th power, a 0 for the 4th power, and then 110 for the 3rd power, 0 for the 2nd power, 0 for the 1st power, and then 54. So you always have to be mindful of missing terms. If you do not put those zeros down, the problem will not come out correct. So first you bring down your first term. We multiply, we get negative 12. Combine, we get negative 12. We multiply and we get positive 36. Combine, we still get positive 36. Multiply these two and we get a negative 108. When we combine these two, we get a positive 2. Multiply negative 6. Combine negative 6. Multiply. We get positive 18. Combine positive 18. And then multiply 18 and negative 3. We get a negative 54. Combine, we get 0. So this is the answer that you would get if you plugged in 3 as well. And that being the case, the remainder is 0. And since the remainder is 0, that means that x plus 3 is a factor. Okay, number 2, this one wants us to solve the inequality. So we have x minus 9 and x plus 2, and that is less than 0. We want to find the values of x that will be less than 0. So what we do on this problem is we're going to find those critical values first by taking the x minus 9, each of those linear factors, set them equal to 0, and then the x plus 2, set it equal to 0. When we solve this, we get x equals 9, and then we get x equals negative 2. So when you're doing the critical values, it is not important to really focus on the squared at this point, because it would just mean you would have x minus 9 twice. And still, if you set them equal to 0, you would still just get one number, positive 9. Okay, so in the first stage, finding the critical values, the squared is not important. We're going to do a number line. I'm going to put those two values on there, negative 2 and positive 9. And then we're going to be using the full problem, x minus 9 squared and x plus 2, and we're trying to find out values that are less than 0. So I'm focused on this part now. What we're going to do, we're going to pick numbers to the left of 2, somewhere between 2 and negative infinity to check. We're going to pick a number between negative 2 and 9, and then we're going to pick a number between 9 and positive infinity and find out which values give us negative, because less than 0 means negative. Okay, so to the left of 2, let's just pick negative 5 to try. Be my test number. In between 0 will be good. And then on the right side, we can just use positive 10. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going to be plugging negative 5 for x in both of these. When I plug a negative 5 here, I will get a negative number. But when you square a negative, it doesn't matter what you get here, positive or negative. When you square it, the result is going to be positive. So this first number is going to be a positive number. And then we have to multiply a positive number times something here. When you plug in negative 5 plus 2, that gives you a negative 3. So this ends up being negative. So we have a positive times a negative. Well, that's going to give us a negative. So this section is negative. Negative numbers are less than 0, so this section is what I want, part of my answer, from negative infinity to 2. Negative 2, that is. So that's part of my answer. When we plug in 0, again, no matter what you plug in here, when you square it, it's going to be positive. So that first term is going to come out positive. When I plug a 0 here, 0 plus 2, that is also positive 2. The number doesn't matter, just the sign. Positive times positive is a positive. So this middle section between 2 and 9 is positive. Okay, and I want less than 0, so I want negative. So now over here we're going to plug in the 10. So these are the numbers that we're plugging in. Going to keep them identified from our critical values. When we plug in 10, again, no matter what here, we're going to get positive. When I plug in 10 here, that's going to give me a positive as well. So positive times positive is positive. So the only interval that came out negative was the interval from negative infinity to negative 2. And we know to use parentheses because we are strictly less than. We're not dealing with less than or equal to. Negative infinity to negative 2.